Most of the things we own are, well, they're just things. But every now and then you come across an object that holds a story. A story so powerful it can reach across oceans and decades, just waiting for the right person to come along and listen.
And that's where this story really begins, with this one message from a man in the Netherlands named Erwin Wilmink. This single sentence kicks off an incredible modern-day quest, and it's all centered on one object, an American airman's jacket lost in the chaos of World War II. So that's the big question here. How does a piece of history, a real, tangible link to a person's life, actually find its way home after nearly 80 years? Well, let's dive in and find out. All right, so our story doesn't actually start back in the 1940s. It starts today with an object that was left behind and the one man who was determined to see it return. So meet Erwin Wilmink. Back in 2019, he's just browsing an online auction, and he sees it, a World War II American A-2 flight jacket. But Erwin didn't just see a cool collector's item. He saw a piece of someone's life, a story that felt incomplete. He just had this conviction that the jacket didn't belong in a collection. It belonged with the family of the man who actually wore it into battle.
Now, to understand why this jacket was even available in the first place, we have to jump in a time machine, all the way back to a fateful mission on December 22nd, 1943, a day that would separate a young airman from this very jacket. Okay, so picture this. It's the 19th air raid on the German city of Osnabrück. Just before 2 in the afternoon, American bombers appear, flying way up at 23,000 feet. The mission target was the city's vital railway hub. But, as so often happens in the chaos of war, the plan went sideways. Thick cloud cover and an equipment failure in the lead plane meant the bombs just missed. They fell on residential areas instead. And the numbers really quantify that chaos. We're talking more than 400 bombs dropped in total. On the ground, 9 homes were completely gone, with 92 more damaged. The total destruction was valued at over $1 million Reichsmark. And these aren't just statistics, right? They represent homes and lives just shattered in an instant. And of course, there was a devastating human cost on the ground. 11. That's how many civilians were killed in Osnabrück during that one raid. 11 lives, just gone, far from the intended military target. But the cost on the other side was absolutely staggering too. On this single mission, the American 445th Bomb Group lost 17 of its bombers, 17 planes, each carrying a crew of 10 men. It's just a brutal reminder of the immense losses in the skies over Europe. So now let's zoom in. Let's go from the massive scale of the battle to the incredibly personal story of one survivor, a man who was on one of those planes, Technical Sergeant George Harris. So who was George Harris? Well, before the war, he was a student at NYU. He enlisted back in '42, got trained as a radio operator and gunner, and was assigned to a B-17 bomber they'd nicknamed Miss America. This disastrous raid on Osnabrück, it was his 16th combat mission. What happened to him next was just an unbelievable ordeal. His B-17 gets hit, forcing the crew to bail out. He's found by the Dutch resistance, but that luck runs out, and he's captured by the German SS. From there, he's sent to the infamous POW camp Stalag 17, and in the final brutal months of the war, he's forced on a death march before he is finally liberated in April of 1945. And get this. At one point during his imprisonment, George actually tried to escape. He was caught and put in front of a firing squad. His life was saved at the very last second by a German captain. George later found out that this captain had 2 American-born sons of his own. You have to think, maybe in that moment, he looked at this young American airman and saw a reflection of his own kids. And that brings us right back to where we started. Back to the present day, with Erwin Wilmink trying to connect the jacket he found to the man who somehow survived all of that. His quest across the decades was about to begin. Let me tell you, Erwin's search was not easy. For years, he was contacting POW foundations, digging through records, searching social media, and he just kept hitting dead ends. It got so tough that at one point, after a friend in New York who was helping him passed away, Erwin nearly gave up hope, but he kept at it. And his motivation is captured so perfectly in the email he was eventually able to send to George's granddaughter. He wrote, "It's my thank you to your grandfather and all the heroes who fought to liberate my country. So it's my present to you, with the only question to take good care of it." This was never about money or collecting. It was about gratitude. And here you can just see the beautiful symmetry of this whole story. On one side, you've got Irwin's motivation, a simple, profound thank you for liberation. And on the other, this incredibly heartfelt response from George's granddaughter, Karen, saying, "I cannot wait to share them with my family and honor my grandfather and his courage." And so, after years of searching and nearly 80 years of separation, the jacket was sent on its final journey. It was going home. This is where the two stories, separated by an ocean and decades of time, finally converge. So the package arrives in the United States. George's granddaughter, Karen, brings the jacket to a family gathering. And this is the moment. This is the payoff. George's son, Barry, looks at the jacket and says, "We all looked closely at it. I recognize my father's handwriting." Can you even imagine that feeling? A tangible, undeniable connection to your father, right there in his own script. Just wow. The news of the jacket's return started to ripple out beyond just the immediate family. It deeply moved friends who had known George Harris, a man they all remembered as being humble, a guy who almost never talked about the absolute horrors he had survived during the war. This is a message from a childhood friend of George's son. He wrote to Irwin, "For me and others, it provided a spiritual uplift in these difficult political times. It just shows you how a single human act of kindness, a bridge from the past to the present, can have this profound, positive effect on an entire community." And what about the young man who survived it all? After the war, George Harris came home. He got married, had 2 sons, became an electrical engineer. He stayed active with veteran and POW groups, and he loved giving talks to school kids about his experiences. He lived a full, rich, meaningful life before passing away in 2008 at the age of 85. The story of George Harris's jacket is such a powerful reminder that history isn't just in books. It's literally woven into the fabric of the objects all around us. Which really makes you wonder, what other forgotten stories are out there, waiting in attics and closets and online auctions, just hoping someone will listen and help them find their way home?